Hello there! Welcome back to D20 Sundays. I'm your host, as always, Ian, the part-time Dungeon Master. How's it going? So, I wanted to talk to you guys about the Death Singer. For those of you on my Patreon, you have the stats to the Death Singer, as it is up there for you to use freely. But for those of you who don't have the Death Singer, well, I guess I'll tell you a little bit about it. Essentially, it is a wraith mixed a bit with a banshee. It's a failed attempt at lichdom that was forced upon someone who was unwilling. And as such, they release a mournful song. And those who hear the song have their life essences drained from them. Essentially, its song and its abilities all deal damage directly to your maximum hit points. DC 15, maximum of whatever 48 plus 3 is. I can't do math right now, I'm tired. But essentially, that's what it did. Now, I put this against the Sriskin campaign in one session, and they did pretty well against it. They dealt with it pretty quickly, but they definitely felt how hard it hits. And it can absorb a good bit of damage if you don't have magical weapons. In fact, I think it's immune to them because it's incorporeal. It has no physical body. So, I put it also against my crime campaign players. Now, they're not as high level as the Sriskin campaign, and they don't have as much magical gear. But at the same time, I thought, if they play it right and then such, they'll do fine. I almost killed them. Almost a TPK. So close to a TPK. In fact, one of its abilities is essentially whenever it sings, everyone around it that can hear it takes 48 plus 3 damage on a failed save. So, yeah, it hurts everybody. And it just needed to get one more song off, and it would have essentially wiped the party. But it didn't get that last song. It kept rolling fours. But, yeah, that session, though, had a lot of fun to it. Not only because of how terrifying the Death Singer was, but how meticulously planned the crime campaign decided to get their shit together and actually plan and try and be a cohesive group versus a bunch of ninnies running around. And I know they watch these, so I'm not saying they're always ninnies. I'm just saying at moments they are ninnies. But that's the fun of Dungeons & Dragons, so no, they had been on the tail of the Branding Iron Killers. They had just recently dealt with Zook, who was a Null Inquisitor. Zook was a very interesting character that I rolled up at the help of Kelker from the Sriskin campaign. Actually, he helped to deal with the response to them, but, not important. What is important, though, is that Zook gave him a small run of money because he, essentially got all the were-rats, to help him to fight against the party. And they dealt with Zook and got, his 2 magic swords from him. I'm like, okay. So they eventually find the trail for Zala, the second of the Branding Iron Killers. And they're called the Branding Iron Killers because when they kill someone, they often burn into the victim's flesh a mark of their god, Modaris. And Zala was, responsible for one of their friends' death, so they really wanted Zala dead. It's like, okay, well, you're able to pick up a trail for her. Some of the guards had seen the woman that you described, and they're pretty sure they saw her heading out towards the hamlet just outside of town, just a few hours out. They're like, okay, we'll go check it out. So they did, they found a hamlet, just a couple of, I want to say about 4 houses, 2 barns. Nothing really big, nothing really fancy, not big enough to be a town, but, something that people might pass through. And they were like, okay, so we're going to case out these houses, we're going to case out these barns, and see what we find. And they did, and they found the one house that the windows were covered up and darkened, and they got kind of an eerie sense from it. And Vordel, the cleric who had a history with Zala, was casting Detect Good and Evil, and he found just a hint of evil as he got close to this house. He's like, something dark's in there, something terrible, something far worse than I've felt before. I don't know if Zala's in there, but there's definitely something evil in there. So the party decides, okay, the other houses said, Zala, or the, the fake name I gave her, I can't remember, that she resided in this house. So we're going to essentially go in and pincer attack her. We're going to, ambush her from all sides. Beaumouge, the rogue hobgoblin, goes in through the basements. Edgar and Andre, they go in through the back door. Varys and Vordel, they go through the front door. Well, in the front door, Varys and Vordel find the dead cultist body of a cultist of Alethara, essentially the goddess of death that the Suriskin campaign's dealing with. One of the cultists was very far from the rest of the group, and they were like, "Oh, that's not good." And then they hear a mournful song. They can't quite hear it; it's very faint. And I decided because they can't quite hear it clearly, they're not being taking effect of the song just yet. Beaumouge goes in through the basement alone. In the basement, he finds Zala standing beside the urn of a death singer. And as they have a brief conversation, where Zala is essentially goading Beaumouge into sowing doubt into Beaumouge herself, she yanks the chain that held the urn closed, and then she just runs. Beaumouge, thinking quickly, decides, well, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out my way. So he runs up and he stabs into the urn with the magical sword he got from Zook. And he did some damage, Really pissed it off. That's what he did. So, because of that, Zala went upstairs and ran into Vordel and Varys, who Vordel used hold person on her and essentially held her in place. And Edgar and Andre came running in through the back door, saw Zala, and just started wailing on her. Varys started wailing on her. And then they all get hit by the Death Singer song. The Song of Requiem. And they all took 4d8 plus 3 necrotic damage straight to their hit points. And they're like, what? Like, yeah. Kids' gloves are off, motherfuckers. But yeah. So they dealt with Zala as quickly as possible. They thought she was the main threat, and also they did not want her to escape. No matter what, she could not escape. So they killed her as quickly as possible, and they ran down the stairs to where Beaumouge was essentially soloing the Death Singer as best as he could. And it was not looking good for Beaumouge. He not only got hit by the song, but also by a life-draining attack, where the Death Singer reached out and grabbed him for a moment with its incorporeal hands and drained the life essence from him. Things were not looking good for the rogue, but with backup, things were a lot better. With the two rogues getting their sneak attack, with Edgar, providing support with his bow, Andre raging and attacking as best as he can, and Vordel, using his magic and doing his best to keep people alive. It was a hard fight, but they were able to do it. They got so low on health, all it took was one more song. One more Requiem. And the party would have wiped. They lucked out, though. I rolled a 4 on the recharge. Yep. The song recharges on a 5 or a 6, and I rolled a 4. But, nonetheless, the party succeeded, if barely. The only casualty that they had? Alice. See, Andre had been keeping a chicken on his head this entire time. The chicken's named Alice. For the most part, I ignored Alice's existence during combat. Because it's like, don't really worry about Alice. It's a chicken, yeah, a stray dart could kill it. But for the most part, I just kind of ignored that Alice was there. But until I was like, Alice would have heard the song too. Alice definitely would have died from it. She doesn't have the health. So as the battle finished, the Death Singer slain, trapped back into its urn, as they, essentially rendered it temporarily unconscious and, closed the lid and bound it back shut. Because they didn't know if they actually killed it or not. Alice fell from Andre's head. And as she did, she changed from a chicken into a halfling. Alice was the halfling that the party had been searching for a reward. Because a number of sessions back, they had dealt with a transmutation school where the one screw-up student who was late had, the night before, left a prank that transformed all the other students and the headmaster into animals with beards. Yeah, that was kind of a very silly session, but nonetheless, the players loved it. As they were like, man, this guy is a real screw-up. But, all of the, other students said that, they saw the one halfling girl, the one of the twins, that she had turned into a bird and flown away. They didn't know what kind of bird. They didn't get exactly a good look as they were too busy being turned into animals. Well, she got turned into a chicken, and she roosted up top until the party got a hold of her, and Andre kind of just claimed her. Yeah, oh, that's just good chicken. See, pet chicken, good chicken. So, that's how the party came to own the chicken Alice. And then only to find out that Alice was really Riley, the halfling woman. And she's dead now. We left off with the party chasing after Zala again. The reason being is because when they went back up to claim her body, it turns out it was a fake body. It was a mannequin. Essentially a magically controlled mannequin that she could control from a distance. And essentially any damage that the mannequin took, she took half of. So she was badly wounded from the battle, but she wasn't there to actually take damage and die. So the party, pulling themselves up, they were like, we need to get back and we need to find Zala before she's able to hide again. And they did. They got back, but unfortunately they didn't find Zala. In fact, I plan on picking that up in the next session. Their trail on Zala. Possibly even Rowan, the last of the Branding Iron Killers. We'll just have to see how they do. Anyways, catch you guys in the next D20 Sundays.